Hi, and welcome to the MedTech Insider, where we give you an inside look into all things med device. My name is Parker Snedden. I'll be your host today. And with me, we have the distinguished guest, Dr. Tom Hedman. Dr. Hedman is the senior principal scientist here at Spinal Simplicity. Dr. Hedman got his undergrad at Minnesota and his master's degree at MIT. And then we were having fun pronouncing this a little bit ago, Dr. Hedman, but your PhD at Strathclyde.
The University of Strathclyde, Glasgow, Scotland.
And what does Strathclyde mean?
It means along the Clyde. The Clyde is the river that goes through Glasgow.
Yeah, that's a fun name.
Yeah.
I just like saying Strathclyde. That's fun. Dr. Hedman has been a distinguished author, being named either authoring or co-authoring at over 100 publications over a very distinguished career. He actually helped design the very first North American artificial disc. Very interesting. I would just want to start the conversation with that because we were talking earlier and you were telling me this. I knew about it, but then you went into some more detail. So maybe tell me the story about the first artificial disc.
Sure. Yeah. This is somewhat ancient history in terms of being the first of my professional projects after completing my master's degree at MIT. At that time, everybody knew that we had to have something better than just fusion for spinal discs, and the thrust was for mobilization. And so I just happened to be able to lead the first team to design, which the team was me initially, but to lead a team to design, test, develop an artificial disc for the lumbar spine. And at the same time, I think there was some efforts going on in East Germany at the time. The wall was still up. And that device, the Link device, eventually became the Charité. We had a better design, but it was acquired by one of the big companies back then, South Organic, came Medtronic Spine, and they more or less just left it on the shelf. But yeah, that was my first endeavor into this problem of disc degeneration, how to treat it, how to try to do something more than take the joint away. And so that kind of got me started.
You were on the forefront of it.
At forefront.
I love it. And well, Dr. Hedman, we're going to be talking about a recent publication that you published about a month ago. I'm going to read the title for our audience here, and then we'll get to the why behind why you decided to publish this. But it's Pathomechanics of Early Stage Lumbar Intervertebral Disc Degradation Leading to Discogenic Pain. And I mean, coming off of you talking about the first artificial disc many years ago that you helped design, you're still passionate about this topic. But what's super interesting, I thought about what we even talked about earlier today, is how you're distinguishing the disc and looking at it in a different way as a progressive stage disease. I think a lot of our audience, physicians, patients, would think of it more as, an aging spine type of conversation, but you're looking at it in a different way. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, you're getting at the heart of why I felt compelled to put this paper together, because I think we can undervalue the fact that this is a progressive disorder, and that this progressive disorder begins a bit after birth and is progressing decade after decade through life. And there is a treatment gap. And this treatment gap existed back when we designed an artificial disc, and it still exists to this day, that a large percentage of people are getting early stage low back pain, are out of the workforce intermittently or constantly. The progressive nature of this disorder is just not very well understood. And I think, as well as we'll probably get into, the mechanical role or the mechanical deficiency of the spinal disc is really at the heart of it. There is an aging degradation that's going on in these tissues, but what those do is really kind of create an environment where the pathomechanics, where you can have mechanical response to that environment that is very negative and very cascading in the wrong direction.
Yeah, let's start there. the disc being avascular, not getting blood flow to it. I think that's where the story even starts, right? As someone's younger, the blood flow is not there. And so talk about just the anatomy and the
Sure.
specifics there and how that lays the foundation for your paper.
Sure. Yeah. So the most important thing to remember about the lumbar intervertebral disc is it's the largest avascular tissue in the body. So it doesn't have direct blood supply. Blood supply is what brings in nutrients and carries away waste products. So if you have a load supporting tissue and it is under high stress, but it's not receiving the nutrient supply that it needs, it's a challenge. It's very difficult for that tissue. On top of that, the nutritional condition of that disc is declining. Starts out uh, not having natural pathways for nutrients to get in, and those pathways get choked and it gets worse with age. So you just have all the ingredients for tissue that's highly loaded to degrade because you don't have the biological support. The simple way to think about an avascular tissue is there's no regenerative capability.
Mm,
There's no ability to repair
mm.
micro damage to these tissues, and micro damage occurs in all load supporting tissues. I think that's something that we also don't realize is all of our load supporting tissues are having damage occur to the collagen at one level or another, but if you have the ability for the cells to repair those tissues, you'll never notice any degradation. But in the spinal disc, that small amount accumulates over time with no repair, and the matters get worse as you go along.
And so that biological foundation leads to potentially mechanical degrading over time, right? So
Right.
maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So that biological environment sets the stage for this cascading mechanical failure. There's other aspects to it other than just the fact that it's avascular. You also have molecules in the disc. Their role is to draw water into the disc, and those molecules, they're in chains typically early on. Those chains shorten. You just have less of that water imbibing molecule in the disc, and that causes the disc to have less water in it. Well, that's important mechanically because that water is helping to support the loads that the disc is supporting. So you have water support. You also have solid tissue support. You have less water, and you have more demand on the solid components of the spinal disc. So that's happening at the same time. You have as well these tissues are being cyclically loaded, and in engineering we talk about fatigue weakening of any material from steel to tissues. The more you repetitively load them, they appear as if they're weaker. A single load can be of a less magnitude and still fail the tissue. So you've got fatigue weakening, you've got the loss of the water support in the disc, you have no decrease in the stress, you have an increase in the stress that the disc is seeing over time. So it's just a very uh, uh, difficult, uh, i- let me just say, uh, I'm sure this is going to get clipped out, but um,
No, well, it's great.
yeah, it's a very demanding mechanical environment that's only getting worse with time.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure if that goes to your question
No, it
completely.
does. What's so interesting to me about like you're challenging my thinking even on the disc, right? Because the day to day that you and I live in, as we interact with physicians and patients that have pain in their low back or radicular pain down their legs, typically that patient, and when the physician starts to pay attention to them, is when there is pain. But you're challenging my thinking and say, okay, hang on a second. Like this starts way earlier on. This is a progressive disease. So
Yeah.
how does should that change the way we think about how we even treat the spine when we start thinking about the lumbar spine? Because I most of us don't until there's actually pain there, or someone's going to a physician and saying, "Well, hey, I'm hurting. What do I do?" Right?
Right, right. Yeah, and you can even distinguish between folks that first are seeing a clinician for severe back pain from those that are seeing a clinician because maybe they have a herniated disc or they have something that is at the stage where it could be surgically corrected. But in actuality, pain is a fairly early signal. The highest incidence of severe back pain is a person in their 20s.
In their
In
20s?
their 20s, before the age of 3. So after 30, after the age of 30, the first incidence of back pain
Mm.
drops off.
Hmm.
So you think of people in their 20s and their 30s, they're at the peak of their physical,
Mm.
condition, right? We think about athletes, 20s and 30s, right? That's when you're at your best. Well, it's also at the point where you're gonna start having, chronic back pain if you're gonna have chronic back pain. So that's one of those facts that are out there in the literature that I think people don't remember sometimes. They don't pull into considering how to treat this disorder. And certainly that's the beginning of the treatment gap. You have people in their 20s, essentially, beginning with back pain, going through decades, perhaps, of back pain, recurrent or chronic, and maybe down the road, those that continue to progress are going to have some sort of a surgical intervention. But you've got decades where they're missing work, they're suffering, and you really need to have a way of treating that early to mid stage disc degeneration. And this has just been something that I've been focused on for a long time. You look at the numbers, that group of back pain patients is incredibly costly for our society because of missing work largely, but also just healthcare utilization. Even though they're not having a surgery or something that's really expensive until much later on. And so we've just got to find a way to treat these patients, get them back to work. But we haven't we haven't successfully addressed that today. So that was one of the reasons I really wanted to get into put this paper out, was to remind us that this is a progressive disorder, starts soon after birth, um, is emerging as pain symptoms in late 20s, typically by the age of 30, and then is progressing from that point on. But you would want to be able, at least at that point, to try to prevent the progression of the degeneration
Mm.
into something more catastrophic, like a disc herniation or spinal stenosis or listhesis or whatever. You'd want to be able to try to prevent that continuing a progression of the disorder.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Do you think that we, and I'll term this like medical community, we as a medical community, physicians, patients, even industry, engineering, do we not think about this when people are younger because there's maybe not much we can do about it at that point? Why don't we think about it?
No, that's exactly right. That's one of the factors is to to date, there isn't a good remedy for this early stage back pain. We have a lot of palliative care options, right? We can deal with the pain fairly successfully. Although, do we really want people on analgesics and potentially opioids in order to deal with the pain long term? No, of course we don't. Um, but the key here is you want something that deals with both pain and the progression of the disorder. Something that would be not burning any bridges, would be minimally invasive or micro-invasive. So that's why not just myself, but I think a lot of my research community dating back into the 80s and 90s and 2000s, we've been looking for this as the holy grail, right? Can we find a way to treat this early to mid stage, big numbers of patients, and not just effectively deal with pain and disability, but also prevent the progression of the disorder into something more catastrophic. So I call it the two P's, pain and progression. I think we deal with pain, but at the early stage, we don't deal at all with the progression of the disorder. It's a mechanical deficiency. Uh, the mechanical degradation is causing this progression. And we've really got to come up with a mechanical solution, a way to prevent the continued progression of the disorder.
Yeah, that's really well put. I'm going to pause for a minute and we're going to have a little bit of fun and then we'll move
Okay.
into the next step here. So, you wake up in the morning, you're ready for a hot cup of coffee or something like that, tea maybe. What's your go-to drink in the morning, Dr. Hedman, when you wake up?
My favorite is, freshly ground, grind it myself, right? Freshly ground French drip coffee, and I like medium roast. You get the full spectrum of flavor.
Okay, that's pretty particular.
It is, I guess. I guess
So
it
you
is.
go to Starbucks, that's like,
No, no,
can't do it.
I'm not a Starbucks guy, and
Yeah.
I'm at home, and I work from home for
Yeah.
the most part, so I wanna be able to just kinda just take care of that myself, and, you can do an espresso from the espresso machine, but I just really like the French drip
I
way of
love it.
making
So
it.
not even a local coffee shop at all. It's like, I'm doing this at home.
I tend not
Yeah.
to.
Awesome.
I don't know, maybe I'm just old and a homebody, but,
No, I love slow drip coffee.
yeah,
It's like just more authentic.
yeah.
You can taste the actual like
And it
bean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
The
good.
odor of coffee is part of the whole experience,
Ah,
right?
so good. Okay. Are you a baseball fan? Sports fan?
I'm not a baseball fan. I
Okay.
am a sports fan,
Yeah.
love basketball, football, hockey, but I'm not a big fan of
So
baseball,
in
sorry.
baseball, the batter's walking up to the plate. If you're at a game, if you've probably been to a baseball game before,
Mhm.
they play music in the background for that particular batter, right? So
Mhm.
you're a baseball player, you're walking up to the plate. What song or maybe just a band would you play as your walk-up song? Like, what are you
Okay,
excited about?
okay. This is gonna sound extremely odd and funny, but bear in mind, at least for the last, whatever, 12, 13 years, I've lived in Kentucky,
Okay.
okay? I love all kinds of music,
Yep.
from jazz to classical to pop to everything, uh, but I really like bluegrass.
Yeah.
I love the sound of a banjo, I just love bluegrass music. So if they were playing something with a really fast banjo player on
Yeah.
there, ukulele, and the big string bass, that'd be my walk-up
How
music.
fun. Do you go to concerts, bluegrass concerts?
Yeah, yeah, in Lexington, I
Yeah.
think it's every Thursday, evening throughout the summer.
Yeah.
They have a open air, free, bluegrass music concert, and sometimes there's ones that we go to indoors as well. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, last one, your dream car.
I'm not a big car guy. Okay, my dream truck.
There you go. Kentucky. Gotta have a truck,
Kentucky.
right?
Yeah, that's right. I just have always felt more comfortable in a truck.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Grew up in Minnesota, lived in Texas.
If you
It's
live
just
in Texas, you gotta have a
yeah,
truck.
it's just truck land. So yeah, probably just a big, mean looking truck of one sort or another.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, good stuff. Well, thanks for letting us get to know you a little
Sure.
better, have a little fun. Um, okay, so let's switch our mindset back to what you were discussing. I guess the conversation needs to go to probably, and I'll term this just spine care in general. Do we, as a community, need to be thinking about just a more proactive approach to spine care rather than reactive when there's pain, like an
Right.
earlier thinking? And what does that even look like for us?
I would be an advocate for us to keep in the forefront of our minds that this is a progressive disorder, and what you're seeing is maybe a snapshot, one time event of a particular patient, but there's no doubt that they are on a progressive timeline, right? It may be progressing more rapidly at times and less rapidly at others, but it is a progressive disorder. I just feel like that is an important consideration if you're looking at what's best for a patient, not just today, but moving into the future. So my focus has been on early stage disorders, an interdiscal solution to prevent that progression, add the mechanics or bolster the mechanics of the disc as it's losing its mechanics. We haven't talked much about that yet, um, but that's been my focus. But I think you could say this about any juncture of spine care is to bear in mind that this is a progressive disorder. It may appear stable at a particular time, meaning that all I need to do is deal with pain, whether it's decompress or provide some kind of a pain remedy. But I think it's critical to bear in mind that this is a progressive disorder, and again, it starts very early and it goes throughout life. The biology doesn't get any better. The mechanics, you have less soldiers doing the same work as you go on in life. And, I think that's an important consideration.
So alluding to what you just mentioned, when we think about even devices that we manufacture, the Minuteman device, I think something that you said in some of our conversations was Minuteman or something like that is really preventing further degradation. Talk a little bit about that and how these devices probably do that more than anything.
Yeah, there's no question that when you provide fixation and fusion, you are resisting at least the progression of that disorder, whether at the stage that there could be spondylolisthesis, additional slip, or additional just collapse of the disc or whatever, you are providing some resistance to that progression. And again, you could treat a patient's pain by decompression only type surgery, but what percentage of those patients are going to fall off the cliff, so to speak, and they're going to have a progression of the disorder and need a much larger surgery later on? What I really think is a key aspect of devices like Minuteman is the ability to go in there and do as little damage as possible, minimally invasive, procedure that's patient friendly of sorts. It's good for your medically frail patients, and it has that potential. I don't know the percentage of patients that could fall off or could progress to the point where they need some kind of stabilization, and at that point, you're talking about a big surgery that they probably want to avoid. So I think uh, that's a good example of where it's important to consider that progression in your treatment choice.
Yeah, that's really good. Let's take the conversation to thinking about the physician, the patient, and they're listening to this and they're thinking about the early stage degrading. If I'm a patient, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm not in pain, maybe, are there any other maybe signs or early warning symptoms that we can look for? Maybe just looking at imaging, or should I just wait if I'm a patient, wait till I'm in pain, and then I'll address it? Anything proactive? I know, right? We talked about there's not a ton of treatments there, but how should that conversation go with a physician and a patient if they start shifting their thinking to more early stage degradation?
Right, right. Well, I've been a patient who had early stage degradation. Pain began about the age of 30. Um,
Firsthand experience.
Firsthand
Okay.
experience and experienced the treatment gap in terms of there really wasn't a solution at the time. Now, of course, I've been working on this, and hopefully, I'm going to have a solution that's FDA approved in a little while here. Um, so I've been there where first your frustration is there isn't really the right remedy, and I have progressed as by the book, I could have told you I would have progressed in terms of the mechanical degradation of my lumbar spinal joint. Um, so, but being aware that there's going to be a progression, that you have already had decades of progression when you first feel pain, I think is an important consideration. Maybe for some people, it's going to cause them to lose some weight, uh, get more exercise, whatever, try to strengthen their core. All those are very valuable factors, which you might not think are necessary if, well, I can just take some analgesic for the pain. Well, maybe that's just numbing you to the pain that's telling you that the tissue's having a problem and you need to do something about it. And I agree that the some things aren't there that we would like after decades of looking into this, but they're coming. And, uh, yeah, so I think that's part of it. It's just even as a patient, I wanna understand that this is not just something that I can expect to disappear. If I've had it for 3 months or it's recurred. I mean, 85% of, episodes of back pain are followed by another one within a year. So, this is typically a recurrent uh, pain situation that you're going to face.
Mm.
And so I think understanding that sets you up to make better choices, even as a patient, what you're going to do about it.
Yeah, grateful for the paper that you wrote that's educating the community, right? Like, because this is a mindset shift for me, just thinking about the disc degrading so early on,
Yeah.
where I think most of us in the medical community don't think about it, don't touch it, don't really put it in our mind until there's pain from the from the patient, and then the physician goes, "Okay, I have something to help you," like we talked about earlier, right? Like, they just if they don't have anything to treat, then they don't really think too much about it.
Right, right.
So it's really shifted my thinking.
Yeah, I wrote the paper, or I felt it was important to write the paper because I think there are just some blinders that we have on. Um, for instance, I look at uh, biological remedies or treatment modalities for this type of a problem. Well, first of all, with the first consideration with the biological treatment is biology is at the root of why this is a problem. It's a very harsh environment. You lose that nutrient supply. That means you have less oxygen. You have more anaerobic metabolism. You've got more lactic acid. It becomes low pH. The disc is harsh and it gets worse, and it makes it more difficult for cells to be productive in the disc. So if you're going to throw a biologic in there but not deal with the nutritional condition, deficiencies, not deal with the fact that you've lost a lot of water and proteoglycans that pull in the water. Uh, it's just perhaps not the right approach, except maybe with a very early stage patient that the environment isn't quite that harsh yet, and you might be able to kind of bring them back a little bit. But I think for most people, again, they've had this biologically harsh environment since birth. By the time they're in adolescence, preteen, 50% of the disc cells are no longer working. um, you have structural uh, degradation in the disc because of the changing mechanics. By the time you're in your late teens, and 100% of us at the age of 30 have tears in our L4-5 discs, and most of us have tears in our other lumbar discs as well. I mean, it's just to kind of get that picture. Um, the approach really has got to address the already lost mechanics and try to remedy that problem. So, um, yeah, so I think I wrote it both to my research peers uh, who are have spent a lot of their incredible intellectual capital um, to come up with a biologic solution, but also to just clinicians who are looking at this and maybe not kind of thinking about the problem correctly, that there's a mechanical deficiency, there's pathomechanics. Aging happens to all of us in all our tissues. So what we call in the paper the vicious cycle of mechanical degradation. And what's happening is you're losing a little bit of the integrity of the fibers just from micro damage, right? There's no healing. So now you've got less trying to do the same amount of work, and that makes the tissue more vulnerable mechanically as you experience more loads. And then you lose more microfilaments or whatever of collagen. And again, you have less trying to do the same amount of work. And so you get this vicious cycle of tissue that becomes increasingly vulnerable because of the damage that it's experiencing. So this is a largely a mechanical problem in the with the background of a biological deficiency that comes to all of us with aging. So again, I want to make it clear to my research peers, to my clinical peers, to patients. Let's look at this disorder properly when we're trying to come up, especially with early to mid stage degenerative treatments, but also down the road, this progression typically doesn't end, and so that should be a consideration when we're looking at any kind of intervention for spinal disorders.
Yeah, I love your heart behind that. I want to end with this. You were talking earlier about over the years of your career, how you've had some younger patients just reach out to you as a scientist, as a researcher, I have chronic low back pain. I'm maybe younger on that continuum. There's not much out there for me. And so, w- what's your heart and motivation in here when you hear someone say that, like, "Hey, Dr. Hedman, help me here. What do I do?" I think that's kind of
Yeah.
fueled your career, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this began with my father, with my own personal experience, as I mentioned. Um, and yes, as I was an entrepreneur with what I thought was a brilliant device idea to treat this problem, we had to raise money. To raise money, you kind of put out there what the technology looks like and what the potential is, and patients would be digging around. Is there a solution coming for my back pain? And they would a number of them would contact me directly, and it's just heartbreaking that, yeah, I think I have something. I think we have something that can help you, but it just takes so long to get something from the concept stage and into the clinic. And I just feel bad that we haven't addressed this issue. And then people like myself 20 years later, progress into some other, I won't get into my specifics, but, other aspects of spinal degeneration and that level. Yeah, there's a bit of a frustration there and a desire to really make a difference. I mean, you don't get into research like this to make money. You get into it because you want to make a difference with the God-given abilities you have uh, in healthcare. And so I felt very blessed that I had this idea that looked like, you know what? I really think this will meet the need dealing with pain and progression, the early stage. Um, and so that's my heart. That's what I want to do is, keep at this until we get there and actually provide a solution for this disorder. And I'll be happy with that.
Well, I'm grateful that you're on our team and that you're curious and that you're not content with the current treatments out there, and excited for that. So, Dr. Hedman, thank you for joining us
And my
today.
pleasure.
Yes, it's
Save
been a
the
great
Parker.
conversation.
All right.
Thanks for joining the MedTech Insider. We'll see you next time.